Hello and welcome to the Phoenix Suns Solar Panel Podcast. My name is Tim Tompkins. Very excited for today's show because joining us, we do have front office insider for ESPN, former vice president and assistant general manager of the New Jersey/Brooklyn Nets, Bobby Marks. Bobby, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Bobby. I love listening to you and watching you on ESPN. And last week, about 4 days ago, you were on there with Mike Schmitz doing a mock draft. And when you got to the Phoenix Suns pick, you chose Coby White, if I recall correctly. Is that right?
That is 100% correct. I took the, it's funny when we do the draft, usually the mindset is always best available, right? The teams rank their boards and kind of skewed a little bit off that and went more of the NFL route and took more of need there. Although I think Coby White is a heck of a player, maybe not the sixth best prospect in the draft, probably maybe 7 or 8. But yeah, I went Coby White just based on that void and, as you guys know, in Phoenix, and a guy who can kind of play on and off the ball there.
Good. So then let's use that as a perfect segue. Right before we started recording, you talked about your favorite times of the season and all that back when you were in the front office for the New Jersey and then Brooklyn Nets. So talk to us about if you were in a front office right now, if you were working for the Suns right now, what would be the discussions around whether you take best player available or drafting for need? Like you're doing with Coby White on the special there.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a process here, and this process started, after the season with workouts. The Suns have, certainly with James Jones and Jeff Barrow now, they will put a board together, top 60 board of players, and that's how they will rank it. As far as who is up there, certainly Zion Williamson will start at 1, and then you can kind of go from there, and it's a basis of opinions and scouting reports and medical and background. And this is kind of the weekend where the board gets finalized. The Sunday before the draft is when you have a really good understanding of where you are, kind of where you're going to be. It's a little bit different if you're picking at 24 because you're kind of waiting. But when you're up top at 6, you have a better feel of who is going to be there. And as I said, you rank the board. And I think the big discussion will be when you get to where is the separation between 4 to 8? Is there a big enough separation or small enough separation that you can take best available there? Or take best, a position of need instead of a best available there.
Within a grouping of players.
Yeah, because we know where the 3 are, right? We know Zion, Ja Morant, and RJ Barrett. So let's take those 3 off the board. And now you're looking at a group of probably 4 or 5 players. So we're looking at Darius Garland. We're looking at DeAndre Hunter. We're looking at Jarrett Culver. We're looking at Coby White. You could probably put, Cam Reddish in there, Sekou Doumbouya, the big from France. And now we're looking at now we're starting to massage. I call it we're starting to massage the board a little bit here, and that's where your discussions come up. As far as let's look at who is off the board at 4, who is off the board at 5, and let's say if it's Hunter and Garland are off the board at 4 and 5. Now you're looking at this is what is left. Now, is Jarrett Culver that much of a better player now long term that we just pick the best available guy and we'll figure out point guard down the road or maybe in a trade? Or is Coby White the separation small enough? And that's kind of the discussions that Phoenix is having and a lot of teams are having kind of internally. Where the board starts to change a little bit is when you start maybe taking some of the medical into it, the background, psychological. Then you start maybe moving guys around a little bit here. Maybe that gets tweaked a little bit on a Monday or Tuesday. But for now, it's kind of all about the discussion between taking players in those small groups.
How much?
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, Bobby, this is Greg. How much does do the scouts play into this? Because we've heard the Suns right now, their front office has a very limited scouting staff. But when you were running, when you were part of the Brooklyn and New Jersey front office, how much did the scouts play into this process of setting this board?
Oh, huge. It's funny that the board got finalized on the Sunday, which would be tomorrow, right? And really, Billy King, who was the GM at the time, and Rod Thorne, who I worked for 10 years, they would not have any input on the board. They would basically kind of walk in on it already set. And then now it is up to the scouts to defend what they just did, to justify, it's basically you're in a court now. Now it's the scout. I mean, hey, these guys have gone. This is why they get paid a lot, or paid. Maybe not a lot, but they get. Paid. This is why they go out.
This is their job.
This is their job to go out and scout these guys. I think it would be a disservice if you did not use them. They're the ones who are doing the backgrounds.
Well, what if you didn't have them on staff?
Well, now you're relying on your front office. Now you were relying on your small staff there. If it is James, certainly Jeff. I'm sure Jeff's watched these guys all year, even though he wasn't in the league. I think it would be fair to ask the coach to have an opinion on this. I think Monty can have an opinion from a personality fit. How does he work? But the coach, Monty was worried about Philadelphia this year.
Right.
Monty wasn't worried about Kobe White playing against Duke in March. So, and it's basically a lot of it's catch up for him. I'm sure he's watched tape on these players here, but yeah, I think you do get a little bit of a disadvantage when you do not have a big staff. Because I think it's good to have opinions, and I think it's good to have some maybe are a little bit biased more because these guys have seen these players.
Does it surprise you that the Suns seem to have decided to forego having large scouting staff? And have you heard any talk about that around the league? If others are surprised by that?
Well, yeah, I mean that was kind of the big thing during the year is that when they let go of Ryan and Courtney and some others before right before the season, right? Was that training camp, I think?
Yeah, 9 days before the season started.
Yeah, that group was, it wasn't really replenished there. I think it can kind of work both ways. I think some people like to keep it small, less opinions. I think the more information you have is the better. And I think it's just a matter of kind of sifting through. And I think if you walk into a room and you only have 3 people in there or 4 people, I think that you can kind of get yourself in a little bit of trouble. So yeah, I think teams were surprised that the group didn't, they did not fill out their scouts, especially when you knew where they were going to be picking. They knew they were going to be in the top 6 or 7 here. And I think a lot, and we'll talk about this later. Like, and a lot of that has to do not just with the draft guys. Like if we're talking about trades, right? And if you are looking at players, and I wrote about it, like you need to go back. Let's go back 2 years from now. All right, what did you guys think about Lonzo Ball 2 years from now? 2 years ago, like where does the number 6 pick in this year's draft compare to a player like Lonzo Ball?
Yeah, they don't have that history.
And we'll talk about. I'm sure we'll dive into that later. But that's kind of just some of the discussions that you need to have. And I think the more opinions about that, or the more information, the better.
So there's been some. I guess people would say conflicting comments from James Jones throughout the year. But what's been fairly consistent is that he is focusing on getting the Suns more NBA veteran players this next year and less focus on draft picks. Last year, they had, 9 guys, 22 and under. So I think really the way James Jones approached this past year was we're not going to be picking in the draft. We're going to want to trade these picks. And what worries me more is, I mean, if you've got, and this is an outsider saying it worries me more, so I get it if I'm wrong, but if you've got this top 2, 3, 4, 6 pick, there's only a half a dozen guys you really have to dive in on after the season and look back. And yeah, you didn't watch them actually play in the games, but you can talk to people who watch them play in the games, and you can get scouting maybe from people who weren't on your payroll during the year. that did watch these guys. And what worries me more is that number 32 pick. And that's like a shot in the dark now. I mean, how could they possibly have truly scouted for that? But then you look at the other side of it, and Ryan McDonough had a deep bench of scouts, and they consistently picked poorly. So you can't always know. You can't always know that your scouting is going to give you the best options.
Well, you're right. And I think probably James is looking back on prior drafts. Let's throw Devin out of the equation because that was a great pick there. But he's looking at the Dragon Bender Marquise Chris draft and saying, like, wait a minute, like we had 13, 14 guys here scouting, and how did we screw that up? And two picks in the top, 8? Top 9? And how did we miss on that? And maybe going smaller is a lot better. And I think you hit it right on the head. Yeah, I think you have an idea when you're picking 6 who your group of 10 guys are, right?
At the most.
Right. Yeah. But what happens when you're at 32 here? And I think teams like Toronto has shown that you can find high value. Milwaukee with Malcolm Brogdon, Toronto with Norm Powell, Pascal Siakam. You can find high value, and then the group of players just becomes expanded now. Now you go from 7 guys at pick 6 to now 35 guys at pick 32. And what happens if they get presented a trade on draft night where Golden State is at 28, I think, and they say, you know what, we like 30, we like 32. We want to go to go up to. We'll give you 28 for 32 in a future second or something like that.
Right.
Then it gets a little bit more like, all right, well, like,
are we even ready for this?
Of these 35 players here. Like now you're kind of in scramble mode.
And then they go to mock drafts like you're involved in and go, hey, who do we want here?
Yeah. I hope not. I love mock drafts. That's not against our guys here and stuff like that. I think mock drafts gives you an opinion. I think mock drafts, I think you saw it in the NFL, right? Like when the Giants are picking at 6 and Daniel Jones is in the mock drafts at 28 and he goes to 6 and now it's like the world is ending here, right? Like come on, how do we know? Let it play out a little bit. I think mock drafts gives like a sense of it kind of dilutes the mind of people. I think it's a great resource, but it's not the end all be all.
But our team scouts, I'm sorry, really quick, Tim. But our team scouts a lot more respectable or viable or talented than Jonathan Givony. Is it Givony or Givony?
Givony. I think our guys are really talented. I think they can go work for any front office. So
yeah. So what is it really wrong to use their big board?
No, I think no. I think it's a baseline. It's like we're almost like team 31.
Right. Yeah.
So we're like, when we do our top 100 or top 60, it's like these guys go out and it's not like they're just throwing darts at the dartboard here. They go out and they bust their tail and stuff like that. I think they have a great base, especially for the international guys. I mean, I would say our 2 guys are probably better than a lot of teams internationally. I think they really nail it there.
And so speaking of a lot of these guys, one place that you can see them, which is probably my favorite time of the year, is definitely NBA Summer League. So the Sun Solar Panel is going to be out at Summer League. I do believe that Bobby is going to be there as well. But for all the Suns fans that are heading out there, we are organizing a get-together. It's going to be on Saturday, July 6th, for all the Suns fans out there at Summer League to get together, have some drinks, and talk about the Phoenix Suns. So if you want to RSVP for that, you can go ahead and go over to our Facebook page. We have all the information there. Myself, Dave, and Greg will all be out there at Summer League for that get-together. So come and join us for a drink. But we do have a listener question from the YouTube chat. Gortat4, he says, for Bobby, the last few years, the Suns have been known for keeping assets until they lose their value. Do you think they finally cash in, and are their assets even attractive at all?
Well, I think the 6th pick in a draft is certainly attractive. Even in a draft that's, I would say, I guess we're ranking it average at best right now based on where the drop off at number 3. I think when you look at their roster outside of Devin, I think you kind of prioritize it as far the value of of TJ Warren based on his contract with, how do teams feel about Josh Jackson? I think that's kind of going back 2 years ago, as far as how they felt about him, when he was coming out of college. I think one thing that's probably a little bit under the radar is that Milwaukee pick that they have from the Bledsoe trade, because we don't know where the direction of, we think we know where Milwaukee's going to be if Middleton and Brogdon are brought back. But that is something that they can certainly use. I think you have players on expiring like Tyler Johnson, who will opt into his contract, of course, here. So it's like, do you want to keep that asset, the Milwaukee pick, to move money now to get into free agency? So yeah, I don't think it's as great as it was maybe 2 years ago, right? When you had we had the young kids. We didn't know what Bender and Chris were going to be. You had some future picks. You had that Miami pick. I think Mikal Bridges, I think, certainly could be, a player that you'll have some longevity here. I think you saw some good minutes for him there. So yeah, I think there's somewhat of a baseline of players here. It's almost like, but we're still feel like we're still kind of at that foundation phase.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of Tyler Johnson for a minute, I know it's got to be just a matter of he just hasn't bothered to tell everybody that he's going to opt in to his $19.2 million. I mean, why would you walk away from that? But if you're in that front office for the Suns, how viable is even the discussion of having a discussion with Tyler Johnson and saying, you know what, if you opt out of this, like was it Valanciunas that just did it with Memphis? If you opt out of this and talk to us about a long-term deal, aren't you more comfortable with 4 years, $40 million than 1 year, 19? And of course, he's going to say, "How about 1 year, 19 plus 4 years, 40?" But how viable is it to even have that discussion with him?
I think you have to, and I think it's a matter of what your comfort level. You got him in February at the deadline.
Yeah, it was late January.
You think he's just kind of a is he more of just an expiring contract, or is he something part of going forward? It's hard for him to, Valanciunas, I think his value is kind of, he opted out of 17.6, so I could see them sign him to 3 years, $42 million. Something like, 3 years, $45 million, where he gets 2 years, an extra 2 years guaranteed and drops that number. I think for Tyler, it's going to be hard where, what is he right now? Probably is he a mid-level guy? $9 million,
8 to 10, right?
Right. So he's looking at it. I got 20 banked right now. Like, why do I need to work an extra year to get that $10 million back? I think it's certainly worth having a discussion. What happens if they come in and offer him 4 at 48? Where at least you have 24 million guaranteed in years 3 and 4. And that drops that number down to 17. But yeah, I think you have to have it, but I think it's a matter of, is he Ryan Anderson, where you're basically like a dead, a dead salary, or are you part of, part of what we're kind of building here?
So take us back. You talking Sunday before the draft is setting that big board, and you're looking at things. You're in that room having those discussions. You're the Suns, right? And if you have Garland and White ranked very closely, what starts to become the determining factors between two players if they're ranked very closely on your board and you assume they're both going to be there at 6'4"?
Yeah, Garland's pretty interesting just because there's really not much of a body of work, right? So how are you comparing a guy that played 5 games? I think he played 5 games. Is coming off a knee injury, had surgery, has not worked out for any teams, I believe, compared to a player that played a full season and played at a pretty high level here. I think that's another reason why you are trusting the guys that went out and saw him on the AA circuit. And if you played for the national team, he played during the summer here. You have to not just rely on 5 games played at Vanderbilt here. So I think, are you looking at Garland where the potential? I think if Garland is picked ahead of White is based on potential, the dreaded P word, right?
Right.
Potential compared to what they are kind of right now, and that's a hard that's a hard thing. That's why they always say that the draft. There's no exact science to the draft. Now you're basically picking on gut.
Yeah, I think there's like a 0% chance that anyone on the Suns payroll watched Darius Garland live.
Well, yeah, because if you would have been out there in November.
And that's when they just fired everybody.
Yeah,
they were still making their offices feel normal,
they were still putting pictures up. That's right. and these same guys were not around for any AAU circuits. They weren't around for any high school. Certainly I can't imagine James Jones going to more than 1 or 2 high school games this past year at the most, and those might have only been in the Phoenix area, because he's focusing on the NBA side. But going back to Kobe White for a second. How much better do you think Kobe White is than Elliot Kobo and DeAnthony Melton in year 2? Like, is it worth doing that again and dumping out on Elliot Kobo and Kobe White, because they're gonna sign a vet too?
Yeah.
They're not gonna put a rookie as starting point guard with 2 second-year players behind him. It's not gonna happen.
Well, you're right. I mean, I think if you go into the regular season and Kobe White's your starting point guard, I think you failed.
With Melton and Kobo behind him.
Yeah, I think you failed.
That's another punt.
Yeah.
Well, and is Kobe White the right kind of point guard for this team? Because he's a score first guy. He seems like reverse Kendall Marshall to me, right?
Right. Yeah, right. Kobe White is not Jason Kidd.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Kobe White is not going to probably come in here and be your setup guy. So, I could see you draft Kobe White, and I could see Devin Booker handling the ball up.
Right.
Yeah. So, he's a combo guard, right? He's a guy that is still kind of figuring out point guard. So that's kind of where that's the big mystery here.
But the real thing is, so the Suns have had the 29th ranked offense, 30th ranked offense, all this just awful. And somehow Kobe White, for all of his failures as a point guard, led the fastest team in the nation, and they were not only good in the open court, but they were good in half court. So we crap all over Kobe White as a playmaker because he doesn't look like Steve Nash or Jason Kidd, but he is pretty darn effective, and he was really good at spot up shots as well as pick and rolls and things like that. So I'm not really down on Kobe White. I guess I just don't want a rookie point guard starting. And then if you do that and you sign a veteran, is it too early to give up on Elliot Kobo and DeAnthony Melton? And if it's not, then what value do they have in a trade? I mean, are they just throw-ins so a team can say, I got a young player back in a trade? I mean, I just don't understand. Now that you have those two, what are you going to do with them?
Well, that's right. And that's why, what is the value of 6, right? I mean, what is as far as if it goes back to, James saying, we want, basically we want NBA guys. We want NBA guys to kind of come in here and right now but who are those guys? What can you turn 6 into that teams are willing to give you? Because someone made a point about Bradley Beal at number 4, and I said, yeah, Bradley Beal in pick number 4 would be great if it was 2003. When Wade, Bosch, and LeBron and that group were in the draft. This is not that draft. And so I think if you're Phoenix, you just have so many different ways you can go. You can go point guard. What happens if probably the best defender in the draft is there in DeAndre Hunter? Do you take him and knowing that you already have Mikal Bridges? So it's like, or you just say, you know what, we're going to take them and then figure it out. And that's what that sometimes is what teams the thinking is.
Well, you're right on the players being good players, then figuring it out later works. If you're wrong and you picked only on potential, like, hey, one of Bender or Chris has to work out, then you kind of lost your job. So so what kind of value does the 6 have? What kind of value does Josh Jackson have? What kind of value does TJ Warren have? The Milwaukee pick, Kobo, Melton, all these are, in my mind, kind of like values, which is not awesome.
Well, yeah, they're not. I mean, they're not like a blue chip, right?
Right.
Like the Memphis pick that Boston has is a blue chip. Mm-hmm. Jason Tatum is a blue chip, right? Guys like that. I don't know about the Lakers guy. Maybe Kyle Kuzma is a not blue chip, but pretty good asset there. So I don't know what the guys that outside of Devin. I don't know if there's a blue chipper there. I would have loved to say Josh Jackson, right? Like I would have.
We would love to say Josh Jackson.
Yep.
We just can't.
Yeah.
How about Ayton? Do you rank him
in
that range as well?
I think Ayton's. My apologies to DeAndre Ayton. Yes, I think DeAndre Ayton is a blue chip.
They didn't put him in that 2019 draft commercial.
I think DeAndre Ayton gets lost in the shuffle here, right?
Yeah.
Like he gets like crapped on because all we did was talk about Trae Young and Luka Doncic and Jaren Jackson Jr. and DeAndre Ayton had a good year, and he hit a strong year here. And
one of the best rookie center seasons ever. It's just that he does it unassuming. He doesn't do highlights.
Yeah, and he kind of falls back in the pecking order here, and I think he's going to be a lot better. So yeah, I think DeAndre I think he's a blue chipper. Yes.
Bobby, I have a question, and we kind of talked about this prior to recording, but as of last night or this morning, there seems to be a lot of rumors around the Nets. They aren't going to offer DeAngelo Russell a contract if they end up getting Kyrie Irving, and there's a lot of signs pointing to them getting Kyrie Irving. Do you have any takes on that?
Yeah, I think it's pretty fascinating considering that the strength of Brooklyn was their backcourt, right? So when you look at or their guards. When you look at the year that DeAngelo had, and he had a heck of a year, he really did. I think I wrote about DeAngelo and I said, it's like, how do you evaluate him? Do you do the analytics guys don't like him, right? Is it the analytics or the eye test? I think you got to watch DeAngelo Russell play and not just look at like his numbers, because he basically put that Brooklyn team on his shoulders probably after Jan 30 when Dinwiddie was hurt, and they had really good success. When you have Russell, Karis LeVert, Joe Harris, and Dinwiddie, those are four strong players there. Now all of a sudden we enter Kyrie into the picture. Okay, so what happens if Kyrie goes to Brooklyn? Russell is a restricted free agent. Hard for teams to pry Russell away if Brooklyn does not pull the qualifying offer and you leave him restricted, because you guys know how restricted free agency goes. You always have to overpay, right? So that's usually the thing. Now, would it come down to that the Nets pull the qualifying offer like the Lakers did with Julius Randle last year and let Russell go into free agency unrestricted? I think that opens up a whole different animal there. And that's a possibility because now it's about relationships. Russell is represented by CAA. It might not be about now, but maybe 2 years from now that CAA is doing you the favor instead. So I think a lot of it will be determined on who that second guy is with maybe a player like Kyrie, because you let Russell go and now all of a sudden you have $35 million in room. So what's the intent of Brooklyn using that on? So I think Russell could be certainly a guy in play, based on what happens with Irving.
And just to get the cap numbers correct, I'm not sure if you can 100% confirm this, but if the cap is estimated this coming year at 109, that would put a max deal for DeAngelo Russell around 27.2 a year.
That is correct. Yeah.
So that's DeAngelo Russell at 27.2 to start. I don't see DeAngelo Russell as a max guy. I don't see Kemba Walker as a super max guy. So the relationship being you almost have to make that offer to get him to sign it as a restricted free agent, and hoping that the Nets won't match and all that stuff. If the Nets are nice enough to let him go and be unrestricted, then is DeAngelo Russell any less likely to demand the max? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, can you get him for 18 or 20 a year if he's unrestricted?
I think you can get him that. I think you can get him between 20 and 22 unrestricted.
Okay.
I think for restricted, I think it's going to have to be an overpay. So that's
right.
What is that? 4 years, 118 million, somewhere around there.
Unless there's some kind of deal, like the Suns actually several years ago, Isaiah Thomas, the Kings did not want to brings Isaiah Thomas back for some reason, and the Suns got him on a great deal, and they only had to give up Alex Oriaki, second-round pick dude, to get him. So is it possible that the Nets would do something along that line, I guess? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think for Russell, too, it's going to be like, what else is out there? Let's say we take Brooklyn and we take, let's say Brooklyn, New York, and both LA teams off the board, right? So that's four out of, I'm looking at 10 teams with major cap space. And then everyone else, like Chicago, Dallas, Indy, let's put Phoenix in there. Is it worth him if the market is in that $18 to $20 million just to do a 1-and-1 and enter free agency in 2020 when he'll probably be one of the better players? So I think there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. I think it goes back to Phoenix where, like, all right, who are we moving now, right? Yeah. Like, what do we do now? It's like another animal. How are we going to create that gap of money because you're not there right now?
No, you got $11 million.
Yeah, so let's factor in that Oubre's back, right? And his hold is there. So now you're looking at that Milwaukee pick and Tyler going somewhere. What does I think you could probably just trade Josh just to get rid of, without attaching, because I think teams will take a flyer on him. So it's bad.
With their cap space?
What's that?
They'll take him with cap. They'll use their cap space and give the Suns
within to room. Yeah. I mean, what about TJ, right? Like so those are your, and I wrote about, those are like, because you don't have it, there's always ways you can manufacture cap space. But with some guys like with Tyler, I think it will cost you something to get rid of his salary.
Yeah.
Well, guys, little housekeeping. I always love the listeners and love how you guys support us. If you want to head over to sunsshirts.com, take a look. You can get some great quality T-shirts, some fun designs that we have, and new ones coming almost weekly. So head over to sunsshirts.com. Check those out. Support the show. So, Bobby, looking at that, talking about DeAngelo Russell in particular, how much does a relationship and his relationship with Devin Booker play a factor in this? With the current landscape of the NBA, how does that impact a guy like that and when he's considering future destinations?
I think he has more of an impact than what James or Jeff would have in a meeting with DeAngelo Russell. I think we've seen it forever that players actively recruit other players, right? And it's we saw it in Miami with how the big three was put together. We saw it in Golden State when KD joined there, as far as these guys having some type of relationship. So yeah, I think having a comfort level already with who you're going to share the backcourt for the next 3 or 4 years, I think it certainly matters.
When you look at a backcourt of Devin Booker and DeAngelo Russell, does that look like a winning recipe to you?
I would say you better have some strong wing defenders out there.
Because you've got Ayton in the middle too. So if you do those two guys with Ayton in the middle, I mean, you need like 4 PJ Tuckers.
Yeah, you need I don't think you need a scoring wing now.
But they're going to bring Oubre back.
Yeah, I think Ayton down low blocking shots. I think
they're almost certainly bringing Oubre back, right? So you've got then Russell, Booker, Oubre, who when he's focused, he's a good defender, but he's not really that Trevor Ariza in his prime kind of guy. And he'll take minutes away from Mikal Bridges, actually. And then DeAndre Ayton, gosh, how do you create a defense out of that?
Yeah. Dave, I like your strategy, Dave. Just go with 6 guys. You had 4 PJ Tuckers with the backcourt, and you're going 6 on 5. That might be the only way you can make it work.
I would say this. If you get DeAngelo Russell, if you are a sports bettor out there, just take the over every game.
So this time of year, Bobby, when we're talking about potential trades, and when does that heat up? Is it a few days before the draft? Is it draft night? Does it just kind of depend on the year?
It just keeps on going. It's it seems like the only time it doesn't is like August and like early September.
Well, what does the clock in your head say on Anthony Davis trade?
Well, I thought, I'm more optimistic that a Davis deal will happen by the night of the draft than I was back in late January, early February when he had demanded first, right? I thought, and I I publicly said it on ESPN, and I think I got scorned by Laker Nation that that I put it at 1% that Davis would be traded by the deadline. And I just thought of it because, like, why? Like, there's no incentive to. He still had another year and a half left, and we knew that the market was going to open up. But I think you started to see the market open up here. I think a lot of it's going to depend on what Davis, how much do the Lakers want to ante up, right? I mean, that's what it basically comes down to. If they want to go all in, or they want to kind of hold back and see how it plays out. But yeah, I mean, I think the trade dialogue is year round. I think it heats up more when we're in Chicago for the pre-draft camp, as far as kind of putting feelers out there. I think it will certainly start to pick up this week, Monday, when we're starting to look at picks. I mean, teams like Atlanta have made it well known that, the 6 picks that they have are in play. I think you could say
bringing 6 rookies in.
Yeah, I mean,
they're not the Phoenix Suns.
What's that?
They're not the Phoenix Suns bringing 6 rookies in one season.
No, I mean, I think they would have like 8 guys on rookie contracts, which would be like astonishing. But yeah, I mean, I think like Boston at 14, 20, and 22, I think those picks are in play. So I think you get through the weekend, and then then the dialogue really starts to pick up. But as far as, I think it's a year-round process. It's kind of like you plant the seed, and then you go out like 3 months later, and let's see if that thing has grown. Like, is it a tree now, or is it just kind of a pot of mud?
Well, you wrote a great article on ESPN talking about potential Davis deals and how that might look. And in a few of them, you had the Phoenix Suns getting involved. How realistic do you see that as them being that third team and helping facilitate a deal here?
Well, I think it goes back to what do you think of Lonzo Ball? Right? Like, it's kind of like internally, what do you think about, because it would probably cost you the 6th pick in the draft here. Now you have 2 years of Lonzo Ball. Let's block out everything off the court that comes with it, right? So I know we probably can't, but for this segment,
but I actually think with James Jones and Monty Williams in place, there is a lot more opportunity to control a LeVar Ball.
You can't deal him to New Orleans and just take take Lonzo. No.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly more with money in James there too, as far as from a guidance standpoint. But yeah, it comes down to, do you want 2 years of Lonzo, knowing that let's face it, he has struggled with injuries, right? He's not been able to kind of put a complete year. Is that going to change now in Phoenix? There, and so it's a matter of lining up what those same players we talked about in the beginning in that 4 to 8 range compared to Lonzo Ball, and that's probably that's a question that they have to ask internally.
So I've always been against the Lonzo Ball acquisition because of the family, because I had zero trust in Ryan McDonough and Robert Sarver managing the circus. But I've never really had much trouble with Lonzo Ball as a player. I mean, he's basically, this is a little bit of a stretch, but he's kind of like profiles like a Jason Kidd, where at his best, when he's healthy, triple-double threat, can't shoot for the life of him, can't even make a layup. Jason Kidd couldn't make a layup either, but they can be effective enough because they're such good passers that they can make you think they're going to do something you don't want to do anyway, like shoot. I think he could be really good. And if you've got a Monty Williams and a James Jones in place, I think that is the level of maturity you need to manage the circus.
But how much does the fact that the Suns really right now, we don't even know what their training staff is. They're doing this new experimental thing. It sounds
with
like
a company.
Yeah. They don't, the training staff doesn't even make sense. So that worries me with a guy that has injury history too.
Well, you're right. I mean, I think that certainly comes into play as far as the ability to manage injuries and so we see nowadays sports science is huge.
Yeah.
What Toronto was able to do with Kawhi this year. And that group there is big. I think with Lonzo is that, and Kevin Pelton wrote a really good piece on ESPN about lining up the assets for Boston and the Lakers, kind of combining them and seeing how they lined up. And I think he had Lonzo as like the second best asset, and I think behind Tatum. So they're hey, he's a 6'6" point guard who can rebound, dish.
He can defend.
He can defend. He's a playmaker. He's big. You kind of put him next to Booker. I think that's pretty solid. Just a matter of it's an acquired taste because you are taking on a lot of other things that are not just basketball.
So if you were putting, would you rather have, and forget the salaries for a moment because this is an obvious win on one side, but would you rather have a DeAngelo Russell next to Devin Booker or Lonzo Ball next to Devin Booker or Kobe White next to Booker?
I would probably rather have Lonzo Ball next to Devin Booker.
Yeah.
How about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? One of your trade ideas from the article you recently published for ESPN had the Suns getting Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
I would like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I would take Shai. I think he's a heck of a player. I think he's got a chance. I really do. I think Charlotte screwed up majorly when they didn't draft him, or when they traded, I think, back and took Miles Bridges, knowing that who the hell knows what's going to happen with Kemba. And you could have had Gilgeous-Alexander and play them together and go there.
So could the Suns have.
That's right. But yeah, that's right. I forgot about that too. Sorry.
Would you rather though Mikal Bridges or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander?
I think Mikal Bridges is going to be pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I would have, I think Shai's going to be, I think Shai's got the potential. I think we saw flashes of it. I think they're just different. They're different, different players. I mean, one's a point and the other is a, 3-4 or 4-3, whatever we call them. So yeah, I mean, I think Shai gets magnified more just because of the point guard situation in Phoenix. I mean, that's
anyone looks. The fact that Tyler Johnson looked good at point guard for Phoenix shows you how bad the point guards were.
Well, and that's the thing. So we had, so in New Jersey, we acquired Sasha Vujic in a trade in 2010. And it was part of a Terrence Williams trade. And we couldn't shoot the ball. I think we shot like 33% from three as a team before we got Sasha. And he came in one game and made 5 threes, and we thought he was like Ray Allen in reincarnation. And I think Sasha wound up shooting 35 and that's why you need to kind of pump the brakes when you get players in trades, and all of a sudden because you didn't have that, they all of a sudden look really good. Even with Kelly a little bit too, great. He's been great. He was great for you when you got him in December. Yeah. So, but you're basically playing out. He was auditioning for the next contract, and you're playing out the string there. So, I think
he had every opportunity to score he possibly wanted.
Yeah, so when people think he's a $15 to $17 million player, I'm like, whoa, easy. Let's go back a little bit here. I think he's probably more of a $10 to $12 million guy. So I think you have to.
But I think it's pretty well assumed that he's going to get re-signed by the Suns.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think it's a matter of where they value his cap hold compared to how they can create cap space. He won't be a guy he might agree to something, but he might be a guy that won't get signed until July 20th because one of those type deals.
But if it seems like they're so sure of the fact that they're going to bring Kelly back, and Kelly is so sure of the fact that he's going to be back with the Suns, just the way they're acting without saying it out loud, doesn't it seem like the Suns have already agreed to overpay him, or he wouldn't have totally agreed to the ? Already, or
I don't know about agree, but I do think it will probably cost them more in an overpay because you always have the threat of, well, I'm just going to sign the 1-year qualifying, and then go into free agency in 2020. I think that's kind of where when you have strong front offices that can kind of call that bluff and say, hey, we have 4 years, $48 million we're going to give you. And then you kind of let that process go out, because who is it's back to the DeAngelo thing, who is going to be that team that kind of just comes in there with an offer sheet, right? And plops that down. And I don't, it's hard.
I don't see anyone making an offer.
What's that?
Nobody does restricted free agent offers unless they really, really want to. And Kelly seems like the last guy who's going to actually get a bidding war going. I just don't think they will.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's twofold. It's either you can go out and try to put an offer sheet on a guy you really want, or kind of just do what Brooklyn did for 2 or 3 years, and basically just screwed teams' cap space up for the foreseeable future with Alan Crabb and Tyler Johnson,
the Suns,
Porter, and guys like that, and those guys in Brooklyn's done a great job, but it's like. It gets forgotten. Like whatever would have happened if those teams did not match those offer sheets.
Yeah, if they call your bluff,
you basically had to trade like 2 first-round picks to get rid of them. I mean, you got Taurean Prince back, but like, imagine if Brooklyn was stuck with Porter and Tyler and Crabb, and then we're like, oh, salary cap purgatory.
Yeah.
Well, so we've talked about one glaring hole on the Suns roster and point guard, but we haven't really talked about the other at power forward, and talking about guys who had great years going in a contract year. A lot of talk about Julius Randle and him potentially having interest in joining the Suns and potentially some mutual interest. How do you think he would fit with this roster, and what would that look like in your mind?
Well, yeah, I mean, so Julius has been, I think, offensively, he's been outstanding. Right. So I think there's a lot to be desired defensively. Right. I think Julius can play some 5 for you. I think he's probably a small ball 5. But now he's kind of pegged in that number. Right. He's like a $9 to $10 million guy. He went from, it's funny. We label guys and then it kind of sticks with him. Like this guy's a minimum. And then for 7 years, he's a minimum player here. So I think Julius will opt out when the next he's got an opt-out date in the next couple of days. And I think the power forward, and I started going through it, the free agents, it's strong, right? It's a strong group of guys when you look at like Thaddeus Young, Julius Randle, Mirotic, guys like that can kind of fit, that are all in that $8 to $10 million range. So I think it's a matter of like, then it comes back to like, how do you afford them? Are you going to just stay over the cap, right? And then maybe he's your full mid-level guy.
So what's the likelihood that this summer is like 2016, where a handful of guys get dramatically overpaid because teams have money and they lost their targets?
I don't know if we'll ever see the summer of 2016. I don't.
Do you think they might have learned their lesson?
Great housing market, as I call it, the great housing boom of 16, where houses were sold for $1 million, $300,000. I don't think we'll ever get that again. But it is going to be interesting because we talk about the top 10 guys a lot, right? And like it's a domino effect. Like what happens when most of those guys stay with their own teams, and then you have teams like New York and Brooklyn, like that are just sitting there with like $65 million in room.
Right.
Like what happens to, like there's not like Kevin Durant is only one player. Kevin Durant is not 5 players, right? Like, and Clay is likely going to stay in Golden State. So now we're all bidding for Kemba and Jimmy Butler and guys like that. So I think the last couple summers you've seen teams pull back on short-term contracts, right? 1 and 2 year deals. So I would be stunned if we ever see what happened in 16 again.
So Julius Randle. So as Greg said, there's reported mutual interest. Could there? I mean, in my mind, I'm just wondering how he would fit next to Ayton on the court. Isn't he basically the power forward version of every skeptic's opinion of DeAndre Ayton?
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's like, I think I would rather have Thad Young next to DeAndre Ayton.
Right.
Right.
Right. It's certainly Mirotic. I think Mirotic is like the best possible.
Yeah.
Quick hit, thick, 2 or 3, not 2 year, but 3 to 4 year, perfect guy next to Ayton, because he can defend a little bit. He can, and he obviously can stretch the floor.
Yeah.
Julius Randle just seems like the worst possible fit next to DeAndre Ayton.
But how much of this has to do with what Monty Williams actually wants to do with his offense, what his systems look like? To me, that's what makes the Suns so interesting this offseason, is we really don't know what Monty wants to do. We don't really know what James Jones' plan is. So I feel like anything's on the table with this team this offseason.
Oh, I do too. And I think like it's not like you're going to go into, and I always say like, throw darts at the dartboard here. Like if they're going to go out and get Julius Randle, it's because this is how there's a certain way Monty Williams is going to go out and play. right? Like you're not just going to get him because like he's the last man on the board and we've got $9 million to spend. You're like, yeah, we'll just take a flyer on Julius Randle. Like there will have to be a role for him there.
If the rumors are true, though, then the same kind of rumors are saying they're going after Kobe White, who is probably the fastest offensive player in the draft, kind of like a De'Aaron Fox type from a couple of years ago. So that means you want to play fast. And yet if you draft Julius Randle or sign Julius Randle next to DeAndre Ayton, that kind of seems like you want to play slow. So I guess obviously these what percentage of these rumors turn out to be actual real information, I guess it would be my question. Is it just seems like people are throwing stuff at the wall because they don't know what the Suns are going to do?
I think a lot. I think there's just so much out there right now. I mean, as far as even from the draft to free agency, as far as who likes who and who's not who, like there's this thing this morning, like, that, Kyrie's going to go to Brooklyn and the Nets don't want DeAngelo anymore. So it's like, unless you're in their room, like how do we really know? Like, so I think there's a little bit of a smoke screen out there. So it's kind of just a matter of kind of sifting through. Yeah, some stuff like the interest with Kawhi and the Clippers. Yeah, I think that's mutual, right? Like I don't think that's just like something we've kind of fabricated here, but I do think there is a lot out there that teams and agents and kind of just throw out and try to maybe throw people off.
Are the Suns any more respectable or an attractive free agent destination this summer with James Jones and Monty Williams, or does that front office coaching change even make that big of a difference to free agent players?
Oh, I think, now you've got Monty and, he signed a 5-year contract and, Monty Williams is not going anywhere. Right. Like you're not going to get off to, right. If you get off the 5-20 start or 5, like Monty Williams is not going to get fired. I mean, that's the reality of it here.
As opposed to every other coach the Suns have had for a while.
Yeah. And I think you guys have already started to see it like with the draft workouts, right? Like every guy they've interviewed, the media's interviewed after their workouts has been like it wasn't just about like basketball. It was like kind of like they were like getting it was like teaching moments, right? Like that Phoenix will bring in probably 60 guys. They'll draft one, but 59 guys will probably get a lot more out of what happened in Phoenix than what happened somewhere else. And I think that's where like when we were in New Jersey and Brooklyn, like our owner would always say, why do you guys bring all these guys in? Like, why? What's the purpose of why bringing all these guys in? Like, we're agent in 2 years from now, and we're going to go meet and recruit them. Like, they can say, I went to Phoenix, I had a great workout, and I love Monty Williams. Like,
that's a really good point.
Like that's the reason why. So I think yes, I think Phoenix is more desirable now that you have. I mean. You have James. I love Jeff Bauer. I think he can do really good things there. I think there's some, that father figure, kind of keep everyone in line, really organized, detailed, and then certainly with Monty and the staff that he's put together there.
So we've talked about all the options and what could possibly happen with this draft for the Suns. We're at the end here of the show. What's your prediction of what will happen this week with Phoenix?
I think what will happen is that we know the top 3 guys will go, right, in order there. I think Darius Garland is probably, if we ask our own guys, Mike and Jonathan, that he's kind of right now somewhat pegged to Lakers, right? So 5 is Cleveland. And then I think then you're kind of like it would surprise me if Kobe goes to Phoenix. I think you were probably looking at like a Hunter Culver type position there, but I do think Kobe would fit in perfectly there. I think that's kind of, but I think the next couple of days we'll start to see some maybe. Hopefully within that front office, you get some separation as far as who you are liking here. But it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. It's that group of 4 as far as kind of who fits the best.
Do you think the Suns trade the pick, or do you think the Suns take a player and keep?
I think they take a player. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Bobby. We appreciate you giving us a whole hour of your time. We'd love to have you on again after free agency actually happens and the trade season happens, and we'll see what we thought of what the Suns actually did.
Thanks guys. Appreciate it.